And we are live. Welcome into the Fieldhouse Files live post-game show here following the Pacers' 116-103 win over the Knicks to force a decisive Game 7. Tonight was the biggest win of the season because their season was over if they weren't able to pull it up and finish on top here tonight at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. They remain undefeated at home. We'll talk about that. Pascal Siakam providing the outbursts that Pacers have been waiting for from him in this series. How about the eyes of Miles Turner in particular lighting up, telling me, hey, he was determined, he was focused on competing here tonight. More than that, I want to talk about the hustle stats and how the Pacers easily won those, and those were emphasized by the coaching staff over the last 24 hours. More than that, Josh Hart's injury is concerning for the Knicks. I mean, he's struggled with that since the first quarter, went back to the locker room several times, and ultimately was unable to finish the game. Jalen Brunson made his first 2 shots, then missed his next 11, a big second quarter surge. And then in the third quarter, after a pissed off timeout from Rick Carlisle, they regrouped, answered the challenge, and finished off the Knicks for tonight's 116-103 win for the Pacers. And one thing I got to enjoy here going on is just the Indiana-New York battles, because over these 4 days, including last night's Fever home opener, you got Fever versus Liberty last night, Pacers-Knicks tonight, Fever at Liberty tomorrow in the afternoon on ABC, and then Game 7 Pacers Sunday afternoon, that game on ABC as well. So it's a big time for all you Pacer fans and just hoop fans out there as the Pacers get it done tonight to keep the series alive. But you always have players talk about how, the first team to win a road game steals one and has a chance here. Well, neither team has done that just yet. It's been standalone, home team wins every single game. So what will they look like on Sunday is what will be interesting, because I thought if the Knicks won, they needed to close it out tonight, mostly due to health. I wrote at the beginning of the series that it was the war of attrition. It was the physicality of the Knicks that could weigh on the Pacers against the depth of the Pacers. That's such a strength if players went down with injuries or whatever. And right now, only Benedict Mathurin is truly unavailable, out with a season-ending shoulder surgery. But outside of that, Pacers are relatively good. Nobody is 100% at this point in the season. No doubt about that. So right now, I mean, you have about 5 players on the injury list for the Knicks, and Josh Hart clearly dealing with a abdominal strain, maybe an oblique issue there on his left side. He was using a heat pack that's pulled from the hydroculator. I used to make those all the time when I used to be a ball boy there. So that's some insight for you a little bit. But those things can be really hot. That's why they wrap a towel around them. And by the way, you don't want to spill the hydroculator on you. I have, and it burned my foot, burned my hand. Very hot, but that's what it tells me. He needed some heat to apply to that area, maybe his oblique that was bothering him. And the fact we know how tough he is, the fact that he played 12 straight quarters in the playoffs, didn't want to come out. He even told reporters, stop asking me about it. I'm going to play every minute. Y'all know that. Well, he hasn't in the last couple of games, clearly bothered. And the fact that he only was able to give him 31 minutes tonight, and I thought his face on the bench told us everything. It told me not only his concern for finishing this game, which he did not, went back to the locker room, but also maybe the possibility of Sunday. And that brings up this point. Look, they have like a 36-hour turnaround here. Now, the Knicks do get to go home. They do get to be in their comfort of their home beds for the next couple of nights. But this, again, favors the Pacers with this current situation, the war of attrition, the depth, and so many Knicks players injured, especially OG Anunoby. When he got hurt and when it was clear, I think after the first day that he was unavailable, that's where I think this series ultimately turned. Because when he's not available, when he's unable to do what he's known to do, in particular, battle with Pascal out there, then it started to favor the Pacers. The only thing was the Pacers kept getting in their own way. They were getting outworked on the glass. Control the controllables. And they weren't doing that. That's why you saw that, 30-point beatdown a couple of nights ago, 3 nights ago at New York. It wasn't like just shots weren't falling or the fouls went against them. No. In that situation, ultimately, What it was they were getting their ass kicked. They weren't playing hard enough. They didn't want the offensive rebounds. And that's what the Knicks are known for. That is their identity. The Pacers, I would argue, don't really have a true identity right now. They're still trying to figure out this culture, and asking him about it a couple of years ago, Rick Carlisle noting, hey, culture is an everyday thing. It's not something you just have and when one day you don't, or you don't have and all of a sudden you get it. It's something you work on and try to improve upon every single day. So I think there's a positive culture and a lot that has been established, but that remains a work in progress and still has a ways to go. But it's really astounding that the Pacers are one win away from potentially reaching the Eastern Conference Finals against the powers of the East all season long in the Boston Celtics. I was going to be shocked if they didn't reach the conference finals, and I'll be shocked if they don't win and advance to the NBA Finals, which I'm sure will be against either Minnesota or Denver, whichever team on that side comes out on top in their Game 7 as well. So you got a pair of them coming up this weekend, which should be a lot of fun in that department. Come back to my thoughts here in just a minute. I want to get to your questions. And if you haven't left a question or comment just yet, I invite you to do so in the YouTube comments section. If you join late or have to jump on early, I will be posting this on the Fieldhouse Files podcast. And if you're like me, maybe you want to jump off in a second and listen on 2 times speed. I don't fault you whatsoever. That is my personal preference. But if you involve in the chat, it can be a little bit of a two-way conversation here. But the Pacers get it done 116-103. The key quarter was that second quarter. They trailed by 1 after 1, nothing lost. I thought it was notable how the officials let them play for the most part early on. 1 foul call in just the first 5 minutes. Some physicality was allowed. Then by halftime, it was Pacers had twice as many fouls called on them as they did the Knicks. The Knicks had many more free throw opportunities, but that didn't sway the game. That didn't change things entirely. The 3-point, what's been interesting to me in this series, we talk so much about transition points and how the Pacers want to play fast. We've also talked about how they are a good 3-point shooting team when they need to be, how, they could erupt and want to take so many 3-point tries. Tonight, just 26 attempts. They made only 9 of them, and they still got the win. They changed their focus entirely. I thought it was incredibly notable how their first shot made, Tyrese Halliburton 3. Their last shot made in the corner, I believe, Obi Toppin 3-pointer. Everything else between them, 2-point shot. Everything else between them inside the paint. It was not a mid-range. Now, we saw Pascal get into the mid-range in that second quarter, but the Pacers decisively wanted to attack. They wanted to play physical. They wanted to win the inside game. And as we have seen all series long, the team that is more physical, that wins the rebounding battle, and probably the points in the paint is going to come out on top. And the Pacers handily won those 2 departments here tonight. Rebounding, they 47-35. Points in the paint, they obliterated the New York Knicks 62-38. And for those reasons, plus some others, they got the victory here tonight to force a Game 7. To the comment section we go here. Chris, welcome. He says, let's go. Pacers have the advantage on short rest. I think the Pacers can win this series. I don't even want to hear people say that because of injuries. The Pacers have had to win 5 of 7 if they win on Sunday. I mean, let's be real, though. Would the Pacers really be in this situation if Dame and Giannis were not significantly hurt? Maybe. I think you can make a valid argument because of the success they had, winning 4 or 5 regular season meetings. Now, given you didn't face them at full strength, they didn't face the Pacers with Pascal Siakam. Doc Rivers had not been there. But that said, injury situation played a big part, and absolutely it did in this series. But nonetheless, you got to play to your circumstances. And what NBA people will often say, you never apologize for winning here. There's circumstances that go with you. There's certain circumstances that go against you. And quite frankly, the Pacers were due for some good circumstances. Like, how many times did they craft a competitive possible team? I'm talking 2018, 19, 20, and injuries never allowed for that team to develop. Your Sabonis, your Malcolm Brogdon, your Victor Oladipo, Jeremy Lamb type years when you just had injury after injury right there. So Pacers have been on the other side of it, no doubt. And right now it's imperative for them to take advantage of the favorable circumstances. Flamekeeper says on 40 hours rest, Hart will be out or limited effectiveness. Pacers +3 looking like a good bet if you're a sports investor. There you go, man. My first thought on all that is, do you go against what's happened in this series, though, right? Which I just talked about, and that's the home team winning all 6 games. And so, given the circumstances, yeah, it does change your thinking, I think, a little bit right there. You're absolutely right about that. But it does give you a little bit of pause, or I think it should, given what we've seen play out. And man, MSG is the best home court environment. Not the best arena, to be clear, but the best game environment, the best atmosphere, the number of celebrities, and I'm talking real celebrities that they get to turn up. The other thing that I've loved and been really impressed with is the number of alums that have shown up. Now, I would argue Marbury and John Starks are a little too close to the court. Can you back them up? Stay behind the photographers, perhaps, maybe not touch the guys, even if you are former players. Now, that said, I love that turnout. I want to see more of that. That's one of the things that I think makes the NBA special is so many of the dignitaries or former standouts for the teams like to show up, like to show out. Tonight at the Pacer game, Dale Davis, Antonio Davis. I would have liked to see the Pacers do more for them. Pacers in recent history have been doing all kinds of video tributes. Let's get a video tribute to both of them. Yeah. How about let's highlight Derek McKee, who I'm sure was there. I didn't see, but I guarantee he was there. Those are your times you do the tributes. These guys are showing up, showing out, turning up quite well. I much rather see that than a tribute video for a guy who was here for 17 games. Unk2 says he's very excited. Pacers in 7. Luis, are the Pacers ahead of schedule with this 3 to 4 year plan? I think so. And it's mainly because of Tyrese becoming a better player right away, but more so because of Pascal Siakam. Coming into this season, I thought the expectation should be get to the postseason, be a top 6 seed. Once you acquire Siakam midseason like they did, then I thought you probably should have ended up 4 or 5 seed. Now they should have. They threw away a couple of trash games. One of them, I think, late was to Toronto that they should not have. On top of that, Halliburton battled his injuries, but otherwise the Pacers really had a healthy year for the most part. Outside of that comes to mind, right, is you had Andrew Nembhard deal with 2 or 3 just random things, especially that kidney stone that limited him in training camp. And then you got to think right away of Halliburton's left hamstring strain that kept him out about 10 games. But once he came back for good, he had 4 games to miss to still qualify for All-NBA and reach the 65-game threshold. He didn't need that. He played in the rest of the games. Then you've seen some other players deal with some things like Nesmith on the injury report for a couple games in this postseason, but that hadn't bothered him or slowed him down too much. I do think after the postseason, Halliburton could explain a little bit more of how much pain he's been going through and what it's taken to get him available to play, because several games this postseason, he's just not looked sharp, including 2 playoff games in this series alone. But yes, to your point, Luis, I think the Pacers are slightly ahead of schedule. I mentioned it on my last live chat, but I think it's also notable here that what the Pacers are doing, they're doing without their last 3 top picks. They had been in the lottery each of the last 3 years, and none of them are helping them. They traded away Chris Duarte, Benedict Mathurin, he's hurt, and Jarris Walker isn't ready. He's out of the rotation. So just imagine if you had those top picks helping you out right now, in addition to what you already have. And I'd argue, look, in hindsight, and actually, no, not in hindsight. We knew at the time you shouldn't have traded away Buddy Hield either. And this team would be better off as well, both in the short and the long term here. Now, it was doing him a favor. It's not a, the Pacers could have said no, I guess, and not cooperated. It was nice of them to help him out, but I bet Buddy's saying, man, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, right? He gets to Philly, starts, but then has a limited role, comes off the bench. Did have like one productive game, I think, of maybe 17 points in a first half. I do remember during one of the postseason games, but because of health, because of Joel Embiid's availability or lack thereof, they weren't able to advance. So he's sitting at home in the Bahamas watching while his best friend Tyrese and the Pacers continue to advance. And I go back to my earlier comment, just 9 of 26 from 3. That's where another way you've seen this team really shift its priorities and what it accomplishes and what its focuses are. Without Buddy out there, you lack his 3-point threat. You lack his scoring. You lack rather Halliburton have that safety net. So it's very interesting here moving forward. But that trade wasn't healthy because you're not getting anything from Doug McDermott off the bench right now. You're not even playing him. You're keeping the rotation tight. I thought it'd be a little tighter. We have seen Isaiah Jackson contribute. So that has been a positive as he's been the top big off the bench and not Jalen Smith, who obviously has a decision to make coming up this offseason with a player option. Back to the comments we go here on the Fieldhouse Files post-game show. Chris says winner in the rebound category has been the winner in each game. Yeah, absolutely. That's a deciding factor. That's a hustle stat. That one you can kind of look at and kind of tells the picture of the game, especially offensive rebounds. And Pacers don't need to dominate that category, but they were +1, rebounding 1, second chance points 1, points in the paint. The team that was that was able to out hustle, win those 50-50 balls. I mean, you're going to win. You heard Rick Carlisle last game say it was an embarrassing performance. He really challenged his team, I thought, after Game 5 in New York, both there and at practice yesterday. Cussed a couple times. That's typical Rick Carlisle. He tones it back, I think, for us media. He has a couple key lines that he drops, but more than anything, he was pissed off and he kept it short. And he was like, what else do I have to say? Play hard. That's what it comes down to. And it did. MK Sinks, you've attended every single one of these live post-game shows. I appreciate that. He says, can the Pacers bottle this energy to bring to Game 7 in MSG? I hope so. Don't let this game get away. Also, Ty's defense on McBride was concerning. Just too easy. Yeah, you're right about that. Ty's not a good defender. He's not going to pretend to be. I don't think we talk about it enough. There was a point late in the game, kind of like third quarter, TJ McConnell was crushing. I did not like the fact that they brought Ty in. I think it was late third quarter. Look, TJ only played 16 minutes tonight. He was not worn down. He was not tired. I didn't see any reason to go back to Tyrese, who was just kind of, I thought he was fine in this game. He wasn't spectacular. He was not star player like by any means, but he did have a good game. Pascal had a game that the Pacers had been waiting for in this series. Tyrese, you're still kind of waiting for. Could he pop off for a 35-point game or a 20-point, 12-assist game? Now, probably not. One, because of health, but also because in the playoffs, you see tendencies really narrowed down. These teams scout each other oh so well, get a good grasp of each other and their tendencies and what they want to do. You see defensive shifts, and I really like what the Knicks coaching staff did in putting McBride on him to slow him down. And on the other way, McBride and other offensive players are, of course, going to hunt him. Jalen Brunson was hunting and has been hunting Tyrese Halliburton in the pick and roll very often in this one. All right. I want to jump down just in case he might have to go. Jay Michael, who used to be in Indy. What's up, man? Good to see you on here. Can't imagine what you're up to right now with Orlando out of the playoffs, man. That would have been fun to see them continue on. They needed a guy like TJ McConnell. They needed their point guard. So maybe we'll see what they ultimately come away with this summer. But he says, I'm envious you get to cover this version. Stay up to date. Nice. Yeah, I was talking earlier, I think before you got on here, I'm not sure when exactly, but how we didn't get to see those teams to its goal, right? The 2018, 2019, 2020 teams, it was just seasons that were ruined by injuries. Malcolm Brogdon was never healthy. Vic's fluke injury. Sabonis didn't play in the bubble. We saw TJ play. TJ Warren had a great bubble, but then really never was a Pacer after that because of that fracture in his foot. And now he really hasn't done much since. So that part has been fun. Good to see, man. Turner looks like a different player. He is. It's his headspace. It's totally his headspace and his confidence. Once they gave him that contract extension in particular, that's where he's really changed and matured a great deal. I saw his eyes tonight, and I was like, oh, he's going to have a good game. He was playing pissed off. He was playing determined. I saw when he was boxing out early in the first quarter. That's what told me, because sometimes, these guys get lazy, right? First quarter, they're not trying to do that. But he absolutely did. He had a couple big blocks there early on. So that has been fun. Thanks for jumping on here, man. Good to see you, Jay Michael. And yeah, TJ until he's 50, for sure. I love that back and forth when Mike Breen mentioned how TJ looked directly over at JJ Redick, because I think as you know too, Jay Michael, those two are like best friends. JJ Redick and TJ McConnell. I still explicitly remember going to Philly several years ago and being in that locker room, and JJ was outside yelling, "Hey, TJ, hurry up." They were going to go to dinner, obviously, that night. It was in TJ's first return. So that would have been 2019, I think, actually. Um, and that was a cool moment. They obviously have their love for wine, basketball smarts. They both have some kids, so a lot of things they bond over too. All right, let's get back to the comments here. Again, the Pacers winning tonight 116-103, advancing to game 7 coming up on Sunday. Tomorrow before that, also on ABC in the afternoon, Fever at Liberty for those Caitlin Clark fans who may be on here. All right, what else we got? Uncouth says Pacers way ahead of schedule. Pascal accelerated the timeline greatly. Yep, totally agree, like I said. But trading Buddy Hield negatively impacted the team this year. There weren't going to be more extension talks. I think they were too far apart. And quite frankly, Buddy was pissed off about the way it was handled. He saw his former team or his then teammates get rewarded, like Miles, like Neesmith, like Halliburton. And he's sitting back saying, hey, what about me? What about mine? And he ultimately didn't get it. He wanted a number much higher than the Pacers were willing to go to, which is fine. That's why you negotiate. I'm very curious to see what kind of number that Buddy Hield will agree to this offseason as he hits free agency, a little older. But yes, no doubt Pacers are ahead of schedule right now. What else we got? Luis, do you think the Pacers will try to address the Knicks' use of wasting time and other shenanigans to give their players more time? What do you mean? How to address that? How would they address that? There's a couple challenges, certain things. Pacers are very, very good at wasting time as well, especially rolling the ball in and things like that. I think that's where they are fantastic at. Tyrese, TJ do that a lot. Jokic probably is the best at killing game clock. One of the best at that. What else? The Flamekeeper says the whistle has remained slanted even in games 4 and 6. Knicks get more free throws. I don't think it was too slanted. You can't just look directly, at foul calls at free throws. Those are an indication, but I don't think that tells the full story. Remember, the Pacers foul more than any team during the regular season. They weren't good at defending without fouling. So the fact that they have more foul calls, that's to be expected given their history, given how they played during the regular season. That is on brand for how this Pacers team has been playing. Yeah, sure, a couple things went against them. I thought there was a couple calls that weren't consistent, but no need to get into that. The Pacers clearly won tonight. We're clearly the better team. It did not come down to a couple whistles at all. But it will be interesting coming up on Sunday. I know a lot of fans were pissed off about Zach Zarba being out there. I think he's the best official in the league. Now, there were some struggles in game 1, no doubt, but I feel better when Zach Zarba is out there, whether it's a Pacer game, whether it's a game I'm just watching on national TV, because he has such a command out there. They all are not perfect. They're humans, but I think Zach Zarba remains the best official in the league. What else we got? Luis says, with the Pacers being ahead of schedule or ownership make a genuine run. I remember back in the day, the Simons not wanting to get into the luxury tax ever. I got a great indication for you. I got a direct answer for you. Yes, if they can compete for a title, yes, the Simons are willing to pay. Absolutely. The thing is, like right now, if you take their current circumstances today, this is not a championship team. So, of course, you're not going into the luxury tax. Keep an eye on what's going on throughout the league. And so many teams are into that second tax apron, which is going to be costly. I'll be very curious what the Nuggets look like because they have contract extensions that will need to be done, I think, with Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray. You hope that doesn't break up their team. So to spend in the luxury tax, you have to almost in this day and age in the NBA to succeed. And Herb, he talked with us in a sit down, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3. I wrote about it on fieldhousefiles.com. Yes, he is willing. But moving Buddy cleared the road for Shepherd to be able to play. Yep, that is true. And Shep has developed some and been a solid contributor. 19 points, 19 minutes tonight, 4 points, 1 of 3 shooting. And Buddy could have done that, though. So that's my argument there. But to be clear, too, let's talk about both ends of the floor. And Ben is clearly an upgrade defensively. So it did clear more space for Shepherd. It did clear more for Mathurin while he was out there. But for a push for this season only, the team would have been better with Buddy still out there. Do you think Shep still gets extensive minutes during the playoffs if Buddy was here? I kind of just answered that. Sorry. You could definitely tell Pascal wanted the ball from the start. Also really thought the reverse tech before halftime seemed like a nothing burger. I totally agree. And I thought it was bad coverage by ESPN, not to show what happened going into the half or at least coming out of the half. Show us what happened. Show us that it was, in your words, a nothing burger and what went on there. They got tangled up. It was Nembhard. It was DiVincenzo. Brunson even came over, and I could see on a camera that he was like tech, kind of trying to bring it out of him, and it did work. I just wish they would have better explained it. It was a technical. It was on Nembhard. It was after the half. Therefore, they go to the locker rooms, come back, and out of the first half to start the second half, it was going to be free throws. And so that's what happened. And ultimately, that did not cost them. But yeah, and then the other thing to your point here was you could definitely tell Pascal, yeah, and he was so smooth in his mid-range. I don't think he forced anything. He did attempt 21 shots, made over half of them at 11, and that's what you want to see more of. If he could give you 25 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds every game, there you go. That's what you're looking for. I think it's both a combination of Pascal needing to be more assertive, yet at the same time, I think that's on Tyrese. That's on the coaching staff to get him involved earlier on and call his number. They don't call a ton of plays. Now, they probably are, I think, more right now just because it's more of a out of the half court, less fast pace. I mean, the Pacers only had 8 fast break points, and that was a wash because the Knicks did as well. I'm getting a lot of comments about Josh Hart. And all we've gotten so far was Tom Thibodeau saying could be. We'll see. That's the typical answer, by the way, if you weren't aware of what Tom Thibodeau says. If you say, hey, is Miles McBride starting again on Sunday? Could be. I was talking to my Knicks beat writers, and then I had dinner with some of them. I guess it was almost a week ago, I think. Over Game 4. And that was one of the jokes. Is anything you ask him that maybe he doesn't want to reveal, he'll just say could be. Is OG Anunoby playing this Sunday? Yeah, could be. Sometimes it means yes. Sometimes it means no. I think he'll absolutely try. I bet he'll be out there just guessing because he doesn't want his season in with him not even giving it a chance. Unless MRI results reveal that it's something bigger. But right now, the early indications, significant pain. He used a heating pack, could not finish the game. I'm sure he's getting more tests, and it's a short turnaround, which makes things even more difficult and more favorable for the Pacers. I said this on radio this week, and I'll repeat it here. I don't understand the condensed schedule that the NBA is using right now. These are the most important games, and they're getting just 1 day between most games. Now, 2 before this one, that was only because of the fever. That's because of the debut of Caitlin Clark at home Thursday night at the Fieldhouse, which, by the way, I wrote about at fieldhousefiles.com and a full photo gallery there if you want to check that out. But outside of that, it probably would have been every other day. And regardless of who wins on Sunday, the conference finals begins Tuesday in Boston. So that's a quick turnaround. In fact, I'm guessing tomorrow the message from the Pacers is we're packing for 3 games. That's what I'm fully expecting to write about, because I don't see any reason you come home. If you win 3:30 game, that means you'd leave New York, probably an hour bus ride to Newark. Means you get home at like 9 p.m. only to turn around Monday. No, you're staying and going straight to Boston. I can guarantee you that, even though I don't know it for sure. All right, what else do we got on here? I answered the Josh Hart. Probably going to be questionable and try to play through it is my guess. Did I get a better explanation on the Nembhard tech? I think I explained that as well. Again, he just kind of fought with Dante DiVincenzo, got his, and what I mean by that is their arms kind of got tangled up. And that's what was called. It was foolish. It cost them a point. And Brunson made that. DiVincenzo made a 3 to end the half. It ultimately became an 8-0 run because the Pacers gave up back-to-back layups then to start the second half. And that's where it was a decisive moment, I thought. Rick Carlisle called timeout 38 seconds into the second half. And from there on out, it was all Pacers. It was a great response. Nembhard 3, Halliburton 3, both from the left side and from the Knicks bench. And that's really when the game flipped for good. Pacers grew it to a double-digit lead. They never trailed in the second half. And then tonight's game, they led by as many as 23 in what was a third straight blowout in this series. You got to wonder how much of that is just attributed to the short rest and especially the Knicks' lack of depth. Like, it's so hard to turn around game after game. So you invest heavily in one game and then kind of go from there. Ethan says, have you noticed that Brunson and DiVincenzo both nudged the ball out of bounds after a Knicks-made basket? No, I don't. I'm trying to picture what you're saying, and I just don't. I'll check it out maybe for our next live stream. Matt, what's up, man? Thanks for joining on here. Appreciate that. Good to see you. I wish I was going to Game 7, but I will not, unfortunately, which is disappointing. But I was out in Connecticut a couple of days ago for Caitlin Clark's debut. I will not be making it out for either games in New York this weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, unfortunately. Good morning, everyone. Oh, yeah, that is true. It's 12:30 in the morning. Good morning. About time for coffee, isn't it? Pascal was good tonight. Yeah, he sure was. Pacers needed some star to step up. This is a big moment. This is a decisive moment in the series. And if not for Siakam, let's say he had 8 points tonight, I don't think the Pacers win this. I mean, unless like a McConnell went off for 20 or Halliburton looked for his shot more. I mean, the most alarming thing I would say in this series is among them is Nesmith. What happened to his 3-point shot? He was almost good for 2 or 3 threes every game. Tonight, he was 0 for 4. Here's my guess on all this, is he's worn out. He's playing 31 minutes and guarding Brunson. He's got the top defensive assignment, so you worry less about that. But imagine if he was making 2 of 5 in a game. That's a huge change right there. Who's to give credit for giving the players excellent movement and IQ on the offensive end? They're impressive for being so young and mature beyond their years. I think a lot of that's just the individuals and their smarts. It starts at the point guard position with all 3 point guards, with Halliburton, with McConnell, and with Nembhard. All 3 of those you entrust to run the offense. All 3 of those you trust to get other guys to set them up and to have a good time right there. So, yeah, I think that's key. Several others have a good IQ in what they're trying to get accomplished. But it starts with your point guard, extension of the coaches out there. And then Mike Weiner's probably they're not using the coordinator system like they traditionally have, like most traditionally do. But Mike Weiner probably does the most of the offense, along with Lloyd Pierce helping in a variety of aspects. Whereas Jenny Busick, along with Jim Boylan, do a lot of what they're handling on the defensive end. Tibbs has a track record of players getting injured. Do you think it's bad luck or a Tibbs issue? I think it's guys playing hard and things happen. And the more minutes you play, the more likelihood it is for you to get injured. There was nothing dirty tonight. There was nothing random tonight. I don't know if it was a previous injury for Josh Hart, but he just went up, had his arm in there for a rebound, and I don't know if it got tugged or if it re-aggravated something, but that's all it looked like. Just like Halliburton a couple games ago tweaked, I think it was his right ankle. That happens the more minutes you play, and their team and Tibbs's teams play a lot of minutes. McBride was good tonight in the first half. He's finished with 20 points, 15 of those in the first half. If he was kind of the standout Knicks player in the first half, we saw Brunson make 2 quick baskets in the first 2 minutes, but then he missed 11 shots in the road to end the half. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I think the turning point of this game was in that second quarter. 17-5 run to close the half. It would have been 17-2 if they wouldn't have given up that 3-pointer from DiVincenzo. But even more telling is they were down 37-35, and the Pacers rattled off 9 straight made field goals. You don't see that very often, especially in a high-level playoff game. It was a 22-9 run, including 13-2. And during that run, the Knicks missed 6 shots in a row. So I thought that's where they asserted themselves. They kind of changed the vibe of the game, moved in front, and basically stayed there for good the rest of the way. Luis says Nembhard is quietly extremely good. Had an extremely good game, probably his most complete game in the series. 6 of 12, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, solid defensively. Yeah, I could agree with that, no doubt. Yes, Brunson has to do better. Most of his scoring was seemingly when the game was over. It felt like the final 10 points of his team high or game high 31. Yeah, this is game 7's when stars come out. So this is where you look to Halliburton, to Brunson. Maybe Miles Turner has a 25-point game. And if you're them, you're looking at Brunson and DiVincenzo probably. And then a big assist from some other players off the bench, whether that's McBride, who's now in a starting role, or I don't know, Hartenstein dominates the glass. I don't think that it's fair to ask a lot out of Josh Hart. You want for him to be out there, to be able to contribute, but I don't think you can ask a lot out of him. All right, I think I'll take a little bit more here. It's getting late, and how about this? Nearly 50 people on this live chat. We've had several hundred over the last 35 minutes, join in. And of course, you can watch the replay here on YouTube after it's done or listen on the podcast on Fieldhouse Files. Neesmith has no legs on offense because of his defense. Yeah, I was kind of alluding to that. Not surprising, but it would be nice if he'd be able to knock down a couple of threes and extend the game. The Pacers just 9 threes, so they need more players that can extend their range and knock it down. And I do like how they have adapted. Like, threes aren't falling, great, just attack, keep getting to the basket. And tonight, they were plus 24 inside the paint over the Knicks. Pacers would have home court if they took care of the scrub teams during the season. Yep, absolutely. Could have, should have, would have, but didn't. There were over 10 games that wouldn't have been asking a lot for them to beat, right? Portland a couple times, Charlotte a couple times, Toronto, that Bulls game that went into overtime, their first overtime game of the season that they ended up losing. A lot of that. And every team probably has some of that, maybe not as many. I get worried about this team in the clutch. After the All-Star break, the Pacers have been, I think, the worst team in the clutch. So that's something to keep in mind in Game 7, is you want to win decisively because they have struggled. I don't know. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but at one time, I think they were like 3-16 in games that were within 5 points in 5 minutes or less. Ethan says getting the W on Sunday is the priority, but I think taking the series to 7 makes this run seem even more legitimate to non-Pacer fans. A ton of people were so quick to write the Pacers off. Yeah, but again, the circumstances, man, don't forget about that. OG's out. Mitchell Robinson's out. That's a starter along with a 6 man. That's the reason I wouldn't have picked the Pacers in the series. I think the Knicks would have won if they had a little more depth and strength to them. I wondered during this game, as Obi Toppin, by the way, had a good contribution off the bench. You know, they gave him up for a second-round pick, and he's on the final year of his rookie deal. I know it really didn't work out. He was kind of unhappy, maybe didn't get along with Tibbs there at the end, had a shouting match maybe in the locker room, is what one of the beat writers was telling me about up there. But still, he would have gotten a lot of time, I think, during this playoff run just because of depth. But yeah, in general, you're right, Ethan. Just those that don't follow the Pacers, they saw what they did during the in-season tournament, reaching the finals. And them reaching a Game 7 against a good Knicks team, although undermanned and depleted, absolutely means something to the casuals. Does OG play on Sunday? I don't think so. No. I mean, when you pop a hammy like that, you're out for several weeks. We saw that with Tyrese. And so I'd even be surprised if OG's ready to go for Game 1 of the conference finals should the Knicks advance coming up on Sunday. Good stuff as always. I appreciate it, Luis. Thanks for tuning in. You two have been one of the faithful viewers of this after every single Pacers game, so I do appreciate that. Any news on Pacers TV situation and the death of Bally Sports? Nothing new to report there. No. Diamond Sports going through their bankruptcy issues, challenges. My guess is what you'll see is that regional network to continue on. There will be a new naming rights partner as Bally Sports name is dissolving. So like it was Fox Sports Indiana, now Bally Sports. I think there will be a new naming rights partner, but it will still have the same concept that and all of that. That's what I'm expecting. But I think there could be more involvement from Amazon. They obviously bought into it, tried to bail them or have helped bail them out. I think that could positively impact it. And the NBA is very aware and very up to date on what's going on and needing to make games more readily available. The fact that you can get more fever games in market available says all you need to know. You can get 10 of their 40 games available over the air on Channel 13. I was disappointed the Pacers didn't elect to use kind of an option this season at the end where they could have done, I think, up to 5, maybe 10 games and on a trial run, move it from Bally Sports to one of the local TV stations if a deal was reached on a trial run. That would have given you data. It would have given it would have expanded your audience and opened it up to millions who could have just watched any Pacers game with an antenna. If you have YouTube TV like me, you'd get the games. So nothing new to report on that. I know some fans have been disappointed that there hasn't been any influence or live shows or anything like that. It's been weird to not have any Bally Sports pregame or postgame show like they ordinarily do during the postseason. I haven't asked them about it, but I got to imagine it's due to the money situation and the bankruptcy situation and what's the current status. But I mean, the Pacers are making the run here, and local broadcasts end after the first series, and that's kind of the end of it. I would personally love to see the regional sports network return and boost what it's doing. I think there should be a dedicated weekend program, like a magazine program, 30-minute show. I think there should be more features. I think that there should be uh, a lot more. I could get into that. You probably don't care. I'm a big sports media nerd. Again, the Pacers win 116-103 tonight in Game 6. Game 7, Sunday, 3:30, available nationally on ABC, so you don't need a streaming cable platform or anything like that. Unfortunately, the Knicks are fantastic in the clutch. Yeah, for sure. Not Jalen Brunson on here says, how many wins do you think the Fever will get this season? Tough to say. 40 games. I think they're a fringe playoff team. I'm not sure what that'll take. But I think they are better than what they are showing right now. Trouble is they're playing the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference, and they play them twice in the first 4 games. And one team has the MVP last year, and the other has the MVP runner-up in Alyssa Thomas of Connecticut. Breonna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas. So the schedule is awful, and that's because every network wanted to show Caitlin Clark in her debut. And so they've had 3 different games on 3 different networks here to start with, tomorrow being on ABC in the afternoon. Matt says, when was the last time the Pacers were undefeated at home through first 2 rounds of the playoffs? Good stat idea, but I can't look that up right now while I'm live, buddy. Very curious about that. 6-0 in the first 2 series. They've won 11 in a row at home, going back exactly 2 months from today. In fact, it was a loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers, won their final 5 regular season home games and 6 in a row here to start the playoffs. Justin says, does this series and its competitiveness reestablish the Knicks as the team you love to hate over the Knicks? Not yet. I'll speak from my vantage point. I love everything about these Knicks and how hard they play and their toughness and how they don't make excuses. And, Josh Hart wants to be out there badly. So he tried to go back out there and just didn't feel good. So he headed out. Those Knicks teams are just so unlikable, not for the result, but for the personalities and the whininess and things like that. I think this Knicks team is everything you hope for in a team of good personalities, bonding, some connections, and guys trying to play through injuries. So, no, I don't think that reestablishes it. Ike's excited. He says, let's go. Luis says having better local coverage would be amazing and would bring back memories of the 90s when you could almost get to know your favorite player. Exactly. That's exactly my point, Luis. That's what I've stressed to the team. That's why I think features are so important. That's why I think putting players and coaches and staff members on podcasts would be integral to doing all that. Honestly, that's why I started my podcast all the way back in 2015, because 1, I had a lot to say. 2, I had a mic. And the main thing being, I wanted to show off the people behind the scenes, the player relations rep, the community relations, the head of PR, explain your job. I had the head athletic trainer. I had the head strength coach on there. Now, Pacers don't want to do that as much anymore. There's a lot of privacy that goes into that. Some teams don't even make their assistant coaches available. Pacers have been better about that traditionally, but I'd still love to do more. I'd love to talk men's and women's game with Jenny Busick. I'd love to have Kelly Kroskoff on to talk about her memories of the Fever. I'd love to get to know Ted Wu and how he wrote the collective bargaining agreement and now is working for the Pacers and is such a weapon for the team. Those are the things I think so many of you would be fascinated by. I get to know a lot of them privately, but I want to share their stories more. So one of the stories I'm working on coming up is for the draft, and that's the team's vice president of player personnel, Ryan Carr. He's been with the team for a couple of decades now. He's from out west, only came to Indiana because he was a big Bob Knight fan, had a friend that got him in touch, became a manager. He was ultimately Pat Knight's roommate. And Pat Knight just completed his 10th and final year with the Pacers as a scout. Last week was hired as the head coach at Marian University. And once I finally get some time, I'll write that story, as I was the only reporter over there to talk to Pat Knight one-on-one after he was hired as the Marian men's basketball coach. So those are the type of things, Luis, man. That's my bread and butter. That's what I love more than anything, because it's the personalities and those people behind the scenes that draws the interest that you guys can relate with and talk to, and there have a rooting interest for, much like Turner has done with his Turner's Block. I think he's done a tremendous job with that and his outreach and getting the community involved in his WARM program. PJ is late to the party, says, any update on Hart's injury? Nothing substantial, just that he's bothered by an abdominal strain, applied a heat pack on that left side, kind of an oblique injury. Tom Thibodeau, as usual, didn't really add much, just said he could play Sunday. We'll see. I don't expect anyone to say any more than that because you don't want to give up. If he's definitely sitting out, you're not going to say it. That gives the Pacers a competitive advantage. But as I said earlier, PJs, I'm expecting him to try to play because why wouldn't you? If it's just playing through pain, maybe he can get like a shot or something, a shot up. It's not something you want to do regularly, but if it gets you to a game 7, I think you're willing to do that. Not Jalen Brunson says, can you see this Knicks team beating Boston if they win Sunday? No. And I don't see the Pacers beating them. I think, and I've said since before the season, the Celtics are the best team in the East. I fully expect for them to reach the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's still the case, even if Porzingis is unavailable for half of the conference finals. On top of that, they haven't played since Wednesday. The winner of Sunday afternoon is going to go straight to Boston, I think, and have like a day to prepare and zero rest. And if you're the Knicks, you have no depth. If you're the Pacers, this is all new to you. Who the heck is going to stop Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday? It's a handful, but that's a step ahead. But I think the Celtics probably win in 5 games is my guess. A lot of blowouts these last 3 games too. I think that's just the shortened schedule, which is negatively impacting everything going on. Yeah, Boston's well rested. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Players used to go to Pizza Hut. For what? Why would they go to Pizza Hut? I used to go to Pizza Hut, not very often anymore. You're given legitimate chance to go win this thing on the road. I'm nervous. Yeah, I do give the Pacers a legitimate shot. Again, it starts because of health. That's the number one thing right here. Because Jalen Brunson's, he's exhausted. You could see him playing on tired legs out there. Josh Hart, if he's unavailable, like you're going to need a lot more from Alec Burks and Precious Achua. Second of all, and you're already down OG, Mitchell Robinson, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Julius Randle. So if the Pacers don't take care of business Sunday, it's a huge disappointment. That's where I'll leave that. Matt, with the answer, of course, he asked what was the last time the Pacers had been undefeated, I think, in the first 2 rounds. He said Pacers also won 6 straight in the 2013 playoffs, 3-0 in the first round, 3-0 in the second round before losing the first home game to Miami in the conference finals. So that was my first year on the beat, actually. Yeah, that one ultimately went down to the conference finals, game 7. That was a lot of fun, man. Those are some fun years. And Matt, appreciate you using your quick wits and your stat seeking ability to go find that. So first time in over a decade is what you're seeing. And that makes sense because this is the first time in a decade that the Pacers since 2014 have won a playoff series. So in order to do that, you're going to have to string together some home wins to have some success there. All right, I'll take a few more questions here on the Fieldhouse Files live post-game show. If you missed any of it, you can watch the replay, or how about you listen at 2 times speed on the Fieldhouse Files podcast? Is the road crowd really that big of an intimidating factor? Why do they make such a big deal of road games? Yes, absolutely. And especially in New York and at Madison Square Garden. If you watch the broadcast, you totally see why. During every timeout, they're showing another VIP, and it's not just a D-list actor. It's like Ben Stiller. Shoot, I'm terrible at all these actors. That's not my thing. I don't watch many movies, but it's all these Knicks players. It's New York Giants players. It's New York Jets players. Like, it's amazing the crowd that they draw, and they do that on purpose to make these games feel bigger, to make the audience at home feel it. They give away those first row of seats, some of them, for celebrities, and they do it in exchange for stuff. They can show them on the video board. Some athletes don't want that, and if they don't want to be recognized, shown, spotlighted, then they're probably going to have to buy their seat. But that's why you see that. Rest equals rust. Not, man, right now in the playoffs, give me rest 100% of the time. I'm not worried about rust. Even if you are worried about rust, that's for 1 game. 1 game. I like the Celtics' chances. Forget the talent difference. Just from a pure rest standpoint, that is a huge, huge difference that they already knocked away the Cleveland Cavaliers and are already scouting both the Pacers and the Knicks, getting prepared for Tuesday's game. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up this episode of the Fieldhouse Files live post-game show. I appreciate everybody for joining in here following the Pacers 116-103 win over the Knicks, 3-3 series tie. So it becomes the winner of Sunday's game will decide who advances to the Eastern Conference Finals. And waiting, of course, is the Boston Celtics. Game on Sunday, 3:30 Eastern on ABC. And I'll have another one of these live streams for you after the game right here on YouTube. I appreciate all those who joined. Read my work both about the Pacers and lately a lot of Caitlin Clark Fever coverage as well, because there is so much interest in that, especially right here on YouTube. Thanks again for everyone joining me here live or on the replay, and I will talk to you again coming up on Sunday. Have a great night, everyone.